Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you guys, talking about the full moon in Sagittarius, which is approaching. Today is the 10th of June for me here in this part of the world. So it's about a week away, and I thought I'd get this one in a little bit early because I've got a couple of special things that I want to highlight with this particular full moon. Okay, to begin with, first of all, the thing that we need to observe and integrate with this full moon is the new moon that we had earlier in the month on the 3rd of June, which was a new moon in Gemini. And that particular new moon, which I've done a video about, and you're welcome to revisit or have a look at that if you haven't, that new moon in Gemini was forming a square to Neptune. Now, that's pretty significant because this full moon in Sagittarius is doing the same thing. So the archetype of Neptune is highly prominent in the moon cycle of this month, namely the new moon and the full moon, which are really important parts of its cycle. It's the beginning and the middle point being the full moon, which illuminates everything that pretty much began during the new moon. Basic stuff, but just to kind of bring it in to orient ourselves with where we're at when we're discussing a full moon. So again, some basics are have a look at where the new moon was in your chart at earlier of this month. Have a look at what aspects it made to any of your natal planets. Have a look at the full moon, this Sagittarius full moon, which is at 25 degrees of Sagittarius, Sag Gemini. That axis is going to be triggered, highlighted, illuminated, energized, activated, right? That's the full moon really illuminates anything that it is basically touching. So the full moon is a very interesting experience because it brings things to a peak. You know, it expands what's been going on, the last couple of weeks. And this full moon is quite special actually for a number of different reasons, and I'll start to sort of unpack one level at a time. First of all, this full moon in Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter and is conjunct by Jupiter. So it's a double kind of whammy, if you like, just to use very basic language. It's a very, very empowered full moon in Sagittarius because its ruler, which is Jupiter, is right next to it as well. And to begin with, the archetype of Sagittarius is what? It's really about belief, inner belief, faith, truth, expanding one's knowledge, understanding, and consciousness. Extending our perspective from the left brain mercurial level, which was the Gemini new moon. That was all the Mercury Gemini stuff that was going on. So all the ideas that we had during that time that perhaps led to, taking step A, step B, etc., are now going to be really seen from a magnitude of expansion, because that's what Sagittarius does. Sagittarius expands our scope, our vision, our understanding, our ability to tap into the bigger picture, to higher truths, to cosmic energy, to cosmic truths that lie within our own self. That it's not out there. I'm pointing out there, but it's not out there. It's within our own self. So remember, with Sagittarius as well, Sagittarius rules the sky in terms of the day sky that you see during the day. That's beautiful and blue, right? Shining blue, clear sky, that ever expansive sky that you see when you're looking out onto the horizon. That's Sagittarius. It's a powerful metaphor and symbolism for what Sagittarius does when it impacts us, when it activates something within us. It gives us that incredibly expansive view and understanding on a particular matter in our life. So having Jupiter, its ruler, which naturally is in Sagittarius, conjunct it, then you can imagine the magnitude of expansion that's actually possible. So that within itself is wonderful. It's wonderful for opportunities and blessings and expansion of consciousness, expansion of learning, tapping into greater and bigger truths within your own self, beliefs that you have, what you feel inspired about and optimistic about. Inspiration is a good word for Sagittarius, because literally when you have a moment in your life where you feel really enthusiastic and really excited and inspired, that's a Sag moment. That's a Sagittarius embodiment. So, and it's full of confidence and optimism. You know, sky is actually not the limit when it comes to Sagittarius. That's how incredibly expansive it is. And we can even take it back to the planet Jupiter in our solar system is the largest planet. Now, that's not coincidental. That's really symbolic of the nature of Jupiter and its function and how incredibly powerful it is in terms of expanding. You know, there's no limitations when it comes to Jupiter. Saturn is limitations, Jupiter is the opposite to that. So this full moon is carrying this vibration, this energy of no limitations, complete expansion and abundance. So it has all these wonderful qualities to it from a vibrational level. And as I said, you need to see where it lands in your birth chart. And if it is indeed aspecting a personal planet, it's going to touch that personal planet. It's going to light it up and highlight it and expand your experience of whatever that planetary archetype is. Mercury, Sun, Moon, Venus, whatever it is. Obviously, you interpret or integrate the meaning of whatever the full moon is aspecting, you know, and obviously the aspects are going to also inform you of how this full moon will be further activated, understood, integrated, embodied, and experienced. Conjunction is complete embodiment. Square creates an inner dynamic of two different takes on something, and the two different takes, two different paths, as it were, have a bit of tension because they what's happening is in a square aspect, two things are wanting to occupy the same space, and it's not possible. So that's where the fundamental tension comes into square, into the square meaning, but it produces results because it's dynamic and it's very active. So you need to consider the aspects just very briefly. So there's three things that I want to bring into what this full moon is doing that are all actually incredibly powerful components of what is activating this full moon. And they're all really, really positive, which is great. I think we can all really do with some positive energy, you know, on the planet, within ourselves, within our life circumstances, conditions, etc., you know, life passages, life stages, things we're going through. I mean, the full moon's not going to change your life. I'm not idealistic or unrealistic. You know, I like to keep things very real. But nevertheless, because the full moon vibration stimulates and really illuminates things in our consciousness and our life, it's an opportunity for something further to really grow and develop and expand from a space that is inherently filled with abundance and goodness and blessings. So we can't complain about that. That's absolutely wonderful. The thing that I will, add a bit of a caution to is the fact that this full moon is square Neptune. So the square to Neptune doesn't have to be a problem, but realistically, when we are talking about the nature of Neptune, which doesn't have anything to do with the nature of this earthly reality, it's the divine principle and oneness, creation, truth to all things. And it takes its form, if you like, through the rest of the planets and all the archetypes and expresses through those. But really, it has, it really doesn't belong, you could say, to this 3D reality. Neptune is always otherworldly. So for our left brain to bring that into our consciousness, we have to be careful to be very clear and realistic, um, and not get lost in the fantasies and the dreams, and project these ideals that can end up feeling like a massive disappointment when the balloon is popped. Because Sagittarius full moon is like this massive balloon that it contains this incredible abundance of energy that is all promising, uplifting, inspiring, encouraging, confidence building, promoting joy. Jupiter is the planet of joy, Venus is the planet of happiness. So with Jupiter, when it touches us, it's literally like a little magic wand, touching you and instilling you, injecting you with this incredible sense of joy. It's a beautiful, intoxicating feeling because it gives so much confidence and faith into ourselves. And like I said before, there's so many dark things going on this planet. There's so many challenges that each of us individually are working through. Some days are more difficult than others, etc. Some periods, some years are more difficult than others. Everyone's got a different path that they are walking on. But needless to say, everyone encounters challenges and dark sort of periods and the dark night of the soul, all that sort of stuff. So this beautiful vibration for this month can really uplift us and, sort of give us a leg up to step into some courage and confidence and optimism and faith where maybe we may be lacking it. And that's maybe the very thing we need to be able to pull ourselves up and pull ourselves out of something that is suffocating or that is draining us or keeping us very limited and restricted. Remember, limitations and restrictions are Saturn's domain, but Jupiter's domain are nothing of that. They are about freedom, freedom of truth, freedom of expansion, freedom to learn, to deepen your understanding, to connect to that beautiful truth, divine oneness that exists within you, but we find it in many different ways, through many different pathways. Like I've said before, Krishnamurti, quote, "Truth is a pathless land." So everyone has a different version of reality and a different version of what they think truth is. And that's okay. I think we have to be able to accept these things. Some people sometimes make comments under my videos that are, how can I put this? Making a judgment, for instance. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. An opinion and a perspective is something that we all have on everything, right? But to want to make our own opinion 100% correct and our perspective 100% right, the way the psychology of the left brain works and the light and shadow components within us, the ego has to make somebody else wrong in order for them to be right. And that's not unity and unison, that's division, and division exists everywhere in the world. So again, it's about having the ability to accept the differences as well, right? Now, so the Neptune squaring this full moon, I think, is going to be a big player from the point of view of, with the new moon, if you started out with a million ideas, which is Gemini, and filtered them through the Neptune, which glamorized them, then what you're going to find is during this full moon, possibly on a lower astral level, is that the a million ideas you had and the glamorization around those has been blown out of proportion. Because, see, Sagittarius, as much as it is this incredible energy of abundance and expansion, that expansion can also be filtered through, to use a basic word, bullshit. So things can be exaggerated and blown out of proportion. That's the danger of the all-expansive Sagittarius archetype, and the Neptune squaring it, which creates distorted ideals, if you like, right? That's the problem component. And it can be a massive problem for somebody, and for many other people it may not be. So, again, it depends on really what's been going on this month for you, and how you've worked with that new moon energy and what you're up to at the moment. The wonderful thing is so this Sagittarius full moon is conjunct our galactic center, because our galactic center is at about 26 degrees of Sag, and the full moon is 25 degrees of Sag. Now, I'm not an expert in the field of our galactic center, and so the comments I'm going to make are going to be comments more around the spiritual implication, if you like. So from a spiritual perspective, the galactic center and the full moon being on there, next to it, conjunct it, whatever you want to call it, I think really not only does it expand things, but it opens up a channel, a vortex, where, you see, when it comes to the Sagittarian archetype, we are not understanding truth and wisdom and consciousness through the left linear brain. We're actually absorbing all that and working with that and embodying it and integrating it and processing it from our right brain, which is Sagittarius. Third house, ninth house, third house, left brain, ninth house, right brain. So the fact that this full moon is going to be on the galactic center, then the implication is that there's an incredibly powerful vortex that's opening up for consciousness to stream through, that all of us have access to, that can activate these levels of expansion and truth and more wisdom and greater understanding into our own self and into life at such a magnified level because of the galactic center. It's a very, very powerful energy, vibration, space that will be opened up within us, but not processing from the left linear brain, rather absorbing and going with intuition as well, because the ninth house and the Sagittarian archetype also connects to our intuition. It's right brain, it's intuition. So first we need to download this information, and it comes through our right brain sphere, if you like. And then there's all these other different processes that go on, which eventually it comes through into the left brain, because the left brain starts to structure and organize it and label it. You see, when you have a belief in something in yourself, a deep, deep, deep knowing, a deep inner belief, the Sagittarius archetype, it doesn't need to put a label on it, because it has this inherent deeper understanding and wisdom. It's Gemini, the world of Gemini, that archetype, and Mercury, that its function is to actually label things and categorize things in order to have some sort of systematic sort of process take place, to have that linear kind of perspective, if you like, or order of things. But that's just in order for us to, we need it to function on an everyday level, to say, well, my name is Anastasia, cosmic astrologer. Your name is Michael, Jack, Black, Jones, whatever. The fact that you can articulate that and put a label on what it is you like and don't like, that's the world of Mercury, right, and Gemini. And I'm explaining this because it's important just to make the distinction between those two archetypes. With this full moon being right on that galactic center, what we're doing is, from a vibrational level, our consciousness it's like a vacuum, right? Just going into this vortex and absorbing this very deep sort of inner wisdom, right? That's held in the earth as well, right? See, in esoteric astrology, Sagittarius is ruled by the earth, right? Now, that's a very important point. And in my introductory course that I'm putting together, I will be teaching these sorts of methods because it's very, very useful to understand and be able to fuse different ways of understanding things as well. But anyway, I don't want to go into that too much now. So that's one thing, the galactic center being highly activated with this full moon in Sagittarius and Jupiter in Sagittarius. The next thing is, which is really very remarkable as well, is there is a fixed star that is pretty close to this full moon. It's actually in the sign of Gemini. So it is opposite the full moon, therefore conjunct the sun. So it falls within the criteria of, in my opinion, when you are working with full and new moons, particularly eclipses, a conjunction and an opposition. Well, actually, especially with eclipses, a conjunction and an opposition, the primary aspects that you will really focus on. With a new moon and a regular new moon and a regular full moon, you absolutely can pay more attention to other aspects that planets are making. Anyway, back to this fixed star. So this fixed star is called Betelgeuse, and it's part of the constellation of Orion. And it's see, fixed stars is something that, again, is a very skilled and comprehensive area of astrology, and it's incredibly ancient because the ancients would rely heavily on the symbolism and understanding of the fixed stars to describe a person's fate and destiny and life path and so forth. The fixed stars are huge, and I'm a big believer in the fixed stars. I've always been into them since I started astrology 25 years ago. I'm certainly no expert in them, but I dabble in them when I see a fixed star, for instance, in a person's chart where it might be on an angle on the cross of matter. So the ascendant, descendant, MC, and IC, I pay attention to that. Also, if a fixed star is conjunct a personal planet, I think that's very important too. In my own chart, I have a massive fixed star conjunct my midheaven, which really describes everything about my life too. But Betelgeuse is, as I said, part of the constellation Orion, and it's quite an incredible fixed star because there's nothing difficult about it. Now, some of the fixed stars are, the symbolism that you'll read can be pretty scary sometimes, to say the least. So I'm making a distinction here because when it comes to the world of fixed stars, there are a few different layers, though. In more traditional, ancient sort of terms, the language that will be used can be quite negative and quite frightening as well, and rightly so. And I think that really has to do with the fact that ancient astrology, especially when it was practiced and it was used as a divination tool, a couple of thousand years ago, the world of psychology didn't even exist. So there was the consciousness in humanity at that time wasn't integrating principles of psychology, understanding the shadow, the light and the dark, all that sort of stuff. Everything was just predetermined as incredibly fated, and it was either going to be this or it was either going to be that, and you really had no choice because that was the consciousness of the psyche in humanity at that time. That's my understanding. So therefore, the meaning of the fixed stars comes from that field where the perspective on things were quite limited, right? But within that stream, there are some fixed stars that had, instead of having that really harsh, dark, negative sort of perspective, they've got the complete opposite. It's almost like there's no in between, which there will be, but it feels like that sometimes. Very black and white, in other words, which is very reflective of society and the times of that time in history and in, on the earth plane. So Betelgeuse, let me just read something to you. Betelgeuse is one of the great stars of the sky, and its influence can bring unbridled success without complications. It is the right hand, armpit, or shoulder of the god, thereby representing that which is clear and strong. Betelgeuse and its companion stars of this constellation are one of the indicators in a chart of fame or success. Be it in the local or global community, the person influenced by it is effective, brilliant, and successful. Because Betelgeuse is such a strong star, it is one of the few stars where one can clearly see its expression change as it affects different angles of the chart. So in this case, we're not actually looking at it from the point of view of where it is in the chart of this full moon in Sagittarius, because the chart for the full moon in Sagittarius is going to look completely different based on where you are on this earth plane, right? So the way where we are integrating this meaning, which is obviously a beautiful, positive, beautiful vibration and energy that this incredible fixed star is bringing to this full moon, is through the sheer fact that it's actually conjunct the sun and opposite the moon. So this full moon holds this vibration of the qualities of what this fixed star represents. So there's talk of success, brilliance, effectiveness, and no difficulty implied at all, right? So that's a wonderful, wonderful energy and vibration for us to tap into with this full moon. Okay, so we've got this amazing fixed star that has no harsh things connected to it. We have the full moon being aligned with the galactic center, and everything I've said so far holds so much promise and potential for expansion and gifts and success, right? So this can be really, really crucial for many, many people on the planet, because, as I said, everyone's on a different journey, on a different point in their journey. So, there could be things going on in your life right now where, you may have enterprises and projects and tasks and things that you're trying to create in your own life. This could be on an external level. So it could be business ventures, things where you're trying to crack open into something and expand, and you're looking for an opportunity and all that sort of stuff. So this can be very, very promising and potentially rewarding on those levels. It could just open something up for you in that field. On the other hand, from a wisdom, knowledge, consciousness level, all this points to really tapping into an abundance of wisdom that is not ordinarily accessed, you see, because even this full moon being conjunct the galactic center, the implication is that it's our right brain that's tuning in and that's absorbing and bringing this consciousness into our field of consciousness and expression, so that we can actually open, receive, learn more, understand more, And for those of you that are truth seekers and that are on the path, so to speak, people who are studying astrology are all subjects to do with the world of esoteric understanding or evolutionary astrology, whatever it may be. All of us who are on this path of wanting to understand life and ourself and the meaning of our life and the purpose of our life and why we are here. Why are we all on that path? Why are we seeking these higher truths? Why are we wanting to have better self-understanding? Why are we wanting to, open ourselves up spiritually? We're not just doing this because it's an easy thing to do. We are doing it because we want to have, I think, at least anyway, there's a calling, from our soul. There's a deeper calling internally that it's the calling knows that there is much more to what appears, right? Because everything in this world is merely an appearance. And it's an appearance that takes form and takes shape and is given a label through pretty much all the archetypes and all the planets in a different sort of systematic order. But as I said before, Mercury is that part that in our brain that gives labels to things in order to distinguish a table from a chair. You know, why do we call a table and a chair a chair? It's to understand the difference between the two. That's Mercury. Sag, Jupiter, is all about these expansive truths, deeper yearning for meaning. Meaning is one of the key words for the archetype of Sagittarius. So this full moon, if it's not operating on that external material level, where nothing wrong if it is, because that can be very, very important at this point in your life with what you're trying to actualize, what you're trying to create, what you're trying to expand. And we are all here with, taking on different things at different points in our life. We're all trying to self-actualize in different ways. And a lot of that includes actualizing things out there in the material world. That's just part and parcel of the earthly experience. But there is a difference between being completely motivated by external rewards and deep inner rewards that are more connected to joy, truth, and wisdom and meaning. Because, very simple example, you could have $5 billion in the bank. That'd be great. Be a very comfortable life. But would that give you meaning? What sort of meaning would that give you, really? Because everything in the material world is temporary, isn't it? Even that $10 billion is temporary. It's not going to last forever. So this full moon really carries that passage, that openness for us to receive incredible depths of wisdom and truth if we are open to that and receptive to that and are seeking that. This is an incredibly expansive vibration, energy, opportunity for abundance to come streaming through at this point, through this full moon, because of the galactic center. And as I said, that fixed star just adds another level to it in terms of success. Brilliant success, actually, according to, I'm reading from, in case anybody wants to know. So this is Bernadette Brady. Fixed stars. She's quite an expert in this field. And this is a pretty, intense book. It's incredibly comprehensive, and it's just all about fixed stars. So the other thing that I want to, and just to wrap up this video, because there is just one other thing, actually. I did also want to talk about Neptune goes retrograde. So, and Neptune's involved with this full moon because it's forming a T-square, basically, right? Neptune squares the sun and the moon. That's actually a T-square, right? Sun, moon, Neptune down here. T, you can see that. Imagine that's like a T-square. So Neptune is a primary player in the vibration of this full moon, as I said, which, if you've managed to keep yourself and your ideas fairly grounded and realistic, then you won't be thrown about, as it were. But if you've just lost yourself with the glamorized version of the Neptune, which brings in these incredible ideals, which in and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with them. They're beautiful. That's why they were born to begin with, as it were, in your own consciousness. But unfortunately, through the lens of Neptune and the nature of the ego, there can be so much distortion through the filter of Neptune and not seeing the forest from the trees, right? So just got to be careful about that. Yes, so Neptune goes retrograde on the 21st of June. So it's just a couple of days after this full moon, and then we have the summer solstice on the 21st as well. So there's a whole new cycle of Neptune going retrograde for the next round about 3 months. That within itself speaks to a process of, again, internalizing and revising and going back and looking at what we believe is truth, because Neptune is the ultimate truth, the ultimate truth, the ultimate truth. So you see, the way Neptune can play out in our lives is there's so many layers, there's so many possibilities, really. But Neptune usually is either creating a fog so that we can't actually see things clearly. It can leave us feeling very confused, misguided, not understanding relationships or information as they actually are, for instance. Anyway, it can play out on a number of different levels. But in terms of your spiritualized self, spiritualized experiences, which is what Neptune pertains to, then Neptune going retrograde is an opportunity to go back, go within, revise, check out what's going on inside, again, on those deeper levels of truth and your spiritual nature. That's what Neptune is. It's your spiritual nature, the relationship you have with the divine, all those sorts of things. So there's a revision, stepping back process because of Neptune going retrograde for the next 3 months. And that to flesh that out more and to understand that more, obviously have a look at where transiting Neptune is in your birth chart currently. And Neptune's a very slow-moving planet. It spends about 14 years in each part of your chart, so in each field, in each area of life. So it's a long time. And Saturn's energy and experience and vibration is incredibly subtle. It's not in your face. It's really quite obscure and very, very subtle. So it can be very, very difficult to pinpoint exactly what the hell is going on with Neptune at times as well. So it's not easy to make sense of it. But one very effective and positive way to work with Neptune is to dive into the ocean within, dive into those deeper dimensions of yourself where there's no ego. If you can do that, that's where you can really benefit from the energy of Neptune, going into those spaces, letting go, surrendering, trusting. Surrender is probably one of the biggest keywords when it comes to Neptune, right? We have to surrender and let go. And that's one of the most difficult things for human beings on this planet to do, to surrender and let go for so many different reasons, but it is one of the most difficult things. Final thing about this Sagittarius full moon, and this is probably my favorite, is, and you guys know that I love talking about the different goddesses, and I notice when things are going on with these asteroid goddesses, and I happen to notice with this full moon, what we have is the goddess Urania conjunct the sun, so opposite the full moon. It's pretty close conjunction and opposition as well. Now, Urania is one of my favorite goddesses, asteroid goddess. Urania comes from the Greek word meaning heavens, sky, literally. That's literally what it means. Urania, Uranos is a Greek word, and that's what Urania actually means. She was one of the 9 muses in terms of her mythology, and she was a daughter of Zeus, the planet Jupiter, and she's the goddess of astrology and astronomy, plain and simple. She also has other creative aspects to her in terms of music. All the muses, the 9 muses, that's where the word music comes from, the word muse. So these 9 muses, and Urania was one of them, served as basically inspiring humanity, right? So you would have heard, and perhaps you've had this experience yourself. Sometimes people use the expression, "My muse is da da da," or "My muse is so and so," whatever. So a muse is somebody that inspires you through that divine spark connection. There's a force of inspiration that comes through that has nothing to do with this 3D reality and is not of this world. That's what these muses do. They bring out this inspiration in those ways. So the asteroid Urania being conjunct this full moon is again a very powerful feminine vibration coming into this full moon, speaking to wisdom. And I just want to read something to you. So the 9 muses were sisters who inspired literature, science, and the arts. The youngest muse was Urania, the one I'm speaking about now. She was the muse of astrology and astronomy. That was her field, and that was her specialty. And it is said that her ability to predict was phenomenal. She had the gift of prophecy and the gift, prophecy, to be able to predict. And she just would. It's said that she would look up at the stars, and just by sheer looking, making that connection with the star, she would make a prediction, and it would be accurate. That's how powerful she was. So I've seen Urania as a very important goddess asteroid in the charts of astrologers, and I'm one of them, actually. She's very, very prominent in my chart, and very, very prominent, and speaks to why I love astrology so much. So anyway, her vibration with this full moon, I think, again, is just a beautiful energy which inspires more wisdom, more understanding, and perhaps for prophecy to come through as well. And if we just sort of soften that a bit, or make it a little bit more into basic language, we might just interpret that and say, well, her energy with this full moon could very well just be that because she signifies prophecy and prediction, and as I've just explained everything about Sagittarius and the Galactic Center and Jupiter and etc., all this energy with that fixed star, with Jupiter being conjunct the full moon, with Goddess Urania being opposite this full moon, all these archetypes essentially hold truth, wisdom, and consciousness. That's what they hold, and the ability to see into things that we normally would not be able to see, and to experience and absorb and understand material wisdom, insight, consciousness that we normally don't have access to, particularly from our left brain. So it's a very, very powerful passageway for things to really open up on all these levels. And a few days later, there's the summer solstice, which also is a very, very powerful implication in terms of spiritual cleansing, healing, work, activation, things like that. So that's what I have to say about this full moon. It's a very, very, very inspiring vibration and energy. There was nothing really difficult that I said about it, as you heard, because there really isn't anything difficult to say, except for that Neptune that can be a bit tricky for some people. If that plays up for people, or that shows up in the lower manifestation, it might just be for some people that they've blown things out of proportion in terms of the ideals and visions that they had, and there might be some disappointment on that level because they just they shot the arrow too far, so to speak. Remember, Sagittarius is that arrow, and that arrow is representative of shooting to the stars, shooting to the heavens for what? For truth and wisdom and consciousness and understanding, to open ourselves up. Because as human beings with our little personalities, through all the conditioning that takes place from birth up to whatever age you are now, that conditioning creates a lot of limitations in our consciousness because we are confined or restricted or limited because of the conditioning that's taken place, that's filtered through this 3D reality. So it is these kinds of experiences with full moons like this, especially for people who are on the path and truth seekers, that they can have incredible, massive points of expansion during a time like this. So it's a wonderful, wonderful energy. I hope everybody enjoys it and makes the most of it. Love to hear your comments and feedback on anything I've spoken about today, or yes, no, please keep the comments and questions relative to this video. It's just a lot more helpful for me as well. Okay, so sending you all much love and blessings, and love and blessings for this beautiful full moon that's going to, it's building up now actually. As I said, I'm in the process of putting together a course. Please be patient with me. I'm one person kind of doing it all on myself, so it just takes a bit of time. Thank you so much to all of you who comment and ask questions, and all of you who have come to me for a reading. It's I love working with whoever comes to me. It's a real blessing and honor for me as well, you know, with each soul that crosses my path. So if you do want to have a reading, feel free to email me and ask any questions. See you guys soon with some further astro of some kind. As I said, there's millions of ideas or videos in my consciousness. See you guys soon. Bye. Thanks.